Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Developer Live session about Headless APIs. My name is Catalina Dumitru, and I will present today the news about Headless API journey. So, our agenda for today is first we'll talk about the motivation, why we developed the Headless APIs, and we'll have a short recap of the Adobe Developer Live session that happened in May 2023, so earlier this year. And after that, we'll look a little at the statistics to see how our APIs are today, how we use our day, and when we use them. And then we go to the enhancement, meaning that we will see what has been improved in the headless APIs since you last heard about them. And we will talk lastly about the new features we have developed. So let's start. So the motivation, the why in headless, it why we do this. Basically, we have heard you. We know that the APIs unlock a new level of flexibility and allow you to run your business smooth and easy. So we provide them so you can take advantage of using them. So the APIs allows you to integrate content fragments in various context in your supply chain, and also allows you to inject outside generated content into the AEM. So using your APIs, you can inject content you have generated with another tool and create fragments based on that. And lastly, headless APIs allows you to do a lot of automation. For example, if you combine the headless APIs with the eventing mechanism, for example, you can act upon events, meaning that when you update a content fragment, you may think about publishing it. So this is a chain of operation that can be automated. So that is the motivation. That's why we do this. And that's why you are interested in this presentation. Then I will have a little recap of the May edition. I will briefly show you what my colleague previously talked about. So I won't get in a lot of details because this session is recorded and you have it available. If you scan the QR code that is now on the screen, you will be taken to the page where the recording is loaded. But the main topics from May were the GraphQL versus OpenAPI endpoint. So we discussed about different pros and cons and these two paradigms of doing request. And we talked also about the building blocks of headless API. Basically, we have the content fragments and the content fragments model for doing this request. Our base resources are these two, and the models are the skeleton of a fragment. And lastly, the eventing mechanism, where we have different CRUD operations and much more than that, because we also have the publish event. And these events trigger, these operations trigger events. So all of this is covered into the May session my colleague had, and you are most welcome to see the recording on the QR code. Good. Then we can look about statistics. We will see how we used our API. So first, let's start with content fragment. We see that they are used. This is a representation on 1.5 months, 2 months. And we can have from 250,000 requests up to almost 1 million. I should mention this, that the APIs are not yet fully GA. We plan to GA them in the next feature. This is the usage until now. And if you are asking how are they used if they are not GA, well, we have VIP customers, and also they are the back references for the new editor UI and for the admin UI. So we develop APIs that are used by our clients and as well are used by us. So as you see, they are used. They are not fully GA, but they have some traffic. So we also have the content fragment models as well. They are used by our VIP customers and by UIs. And we see that the retrieval models are the most used, even if you're looking at the listing of models or to the retrieval of a model by using its ID. In the enhancement of Headless API part, we will see what improvements have been done to the Headless API since the May presentation. So we have improved the validation mechanism. You may remember that back then, when you created a content fragment or a content fragment model, the validation was done step by step. Meaning, if you had, let's say, 2 errors in your payload, you try to create the payload, the resource, you get the first error. After that, you go back and fix the error, and you'll get the second error. Well, this has changed now because you'll see all the errors existing in one step. So basically, you will have a list of validation status that will bring you details about what is wrong with your request. And this comes in a flexible way, meaning that we offer flexibility while enforcing validation because there are blocking errors and minor errors. Content fragments, for example, that have minor errors can be created. And this allows you to create the fragment without fields, for example, as shown in the example. Or this allows you to create content fragments with fields that have minor errors that can be later updated via patch endpoint or via editor. It's your choice. Uh, yeah, so I said that we have the strong validation and the soft validation. And this validation is visible when we create the resources and also when we retrieve the resources. But let me show you what I mean with this. So for our today's demand, we will have a release. For example, we are a company and we have a product that has periodical releases, let's say once a year, and it's the time to do a release. For that, we want to have some kind of release note, meaning that we have a model that it's reusable. This model is used every time we have a release. And based on this model, we create content fragment. So our model for doing this release is the product release model. So basically, this is the skeleton of our release notes page. For example, when we publish, so when we have the application online, we also publish some release notes on a page so client can know exactly what has changed. So in our release model, we have the release name, that is a text file, and it's required because it's essential and has a default value and a max length. Then we have a list of release notes. So these release notes are content fragments. This is a reference field that will be created previously. I will come back to it in a few seconds. And these release notes have a default value. So if no value is attached, this will be used. And yeah, we have the release version, which is 20 something. And we have the patch number. And let's say we can have a release that is patch 0. And then we have patch 2, 3, depending on what things has changed in the release. And we have a min of 0 and a max of 100. We have the release description, the release date, when you publish the release type, which can be major, minor, or patch. And as I said earlier, we have a list of release notes, which is a content fragment that has a content fragment model. And for a release note, it's made upon of a Jira ticket, which is the text. And this is the Jira number of the release note and the description, what this Jira is about. This basically is the base or our demo. I will create the resources. Actually, let me create the release notes first. And based on that, I will copy the ID of the first content fragment we have created, and I will paste it here. So our release note accepts content fragments that have this type. And yeah, this way I created the release model. And let's go to our release content fragment now, because we have created the content fragment models, the skeleton of how we want to have this content fragment, and this can be reused. For now, we'll create content for an October release. So we have the name, we have the title, we have the name, we have the description, model ID, that is the one we have just created. One moment. Okay, it is the one that we have just created. We have the path and the field. And now let me show you what I meant with the validation. For example, in this first try, we have some errors that are blockers, meaning that without this field, our content fragment is not valid. So if we try to create it as it is, we'll get that we don't have the title of the release, we don't have the model ID. So basically, we are trying to create a content fragment without knowing how it should look. And we don't have the parent tag, meaning that we are trying to create the content fragment without knowing where to create it. So these are some blocking issues, and you see that you cannot create it. So getting back to this is the strong validation I was talking about. And we also have soft validation. So we have the same model we have created, and now we have the title, we have the model ID, and we have the parent path, but we don't have any field specified. So when I try to create it, we will see that our content fragment is created, and we will have, okay, so we have the validation status. And if we go to the patch, we see that we have a message for validation because this is a field that is required. Required is true, and with a min and max between 0 and 100. And there we have all the fields, all the validation in place. So we know that the release type can be null. It is a required type. We know that the release notes can be null and they are an array. And the release name also. So you can see that for the fields that have a default value, we have a value attached. For example, the release notes, if we go to the model, we see that we have the default value that is also reflected in here. And now let's go and let me create some release notes. So we have a proper working example. So first we can create this release note. Let's say this is 4. And this release note has a Jira ticket attached to it in the description. It fixes some security issues. Then we go to the second release note just to have multiple examples. This is another Jira that has some inconsistency issues addressing it. We have created it, and then we go and create some more release notes, and we see that we have them. So we have created from 4 to 6, and now we go and have a working example that is without errors. So let's say that this is the A, and this is our content fragment. And here we have the title, the model ID, parent path that are mandatory. We have the release name. Let's say keep it shorter. We have the list of content fragments that are a release note, the one that we just created. We have the release version, the patch, which is the first patch, the release description. This includes the various performance and bug fixes, the release date, and the enumeration, which is a release type. So this is a major release. And we will create the content fragment that has successfully created, and we see that the validation status is empty, meaning that there are no errors. Our content fragment is valid and good to go. So this was about the validation mechanism that has been improved. Now, another thing that has been improved is the documentation. And if you want to find more about this, you can scan the QR code that is on the screen and you'll get straight to the documentation. So we have made our documentation clear and easy to use, so you can experiment with it. I really recommend you to go to this site and try to use it and give us a feedback how it looks. It is easy as we think it is. And yeah, I will have a short walk through it so you can get a hint of how to use it. For example, we have the fragments endpoint, we have the models on also the GraphQL endpoints. But I will start with the fragment. We have all the endpoints that are available, and you can use all of them, for example, to request to create a content fragment. With this endpoint, you can create a content fragment as I showed you in the earlier demo. So it gives you details about how the payload should look. It gives you details about the required. We see that the title, model ID, and parent path are required, and you cannot create a content fragment without them, as we seen earlier. And also, it gives you the URL, how it should look, um, the responses it has. So in the successful event, it will get a 201. You'll get the errors if you have errors, and so on. After that, I don't know, it can go to another, retrieve the version of a content fragment. And you have here how your request should look and what you should receive. You also have the 200 here. So this is the payload in case of in the happy case. And all details are in here. Also for content fragment models, for example, in the creation, you have the native pieces to create the resource. You have the type. You can see that we have multiple types of fields. We can have a text field, a date time, enumeration. All of these have been shown earlier into this demo. We see this is the text field, the content fragment, the number, daytime. They are all in here and they can be visible in the documentation as well. And we can see that the text field has a specific field as well. So specific properties as the max length. And for example, we have the number that has the min and max. So all of these have validation in place and they are well documented. Try it and let us know how it went. So then going to the new strength of Headless API, this will show you what have we developed since you last heard from us. So the new features we have. First, we have tagging API. So tagging API is a great way of organizing your content, basically. You can have predefined tags or user-defined keywords like words or phrases that can be attached to your resources. So tagging can be used with content fragments variations, or with content fragment models. And in this way, you can search your content fragments or your resources actually more easily, and you can organize and act upon some features based on text. So I will show you a short demo of this. As you know, we have created the resources. This will be the base for our demo. And this was the content fragment we created with the validation status empty, meaning this is the successful created everything in place content fragment. We have copied the fragment ID because this is the uniquely identifier of the resource. And we want to add some tag. So the endpoint looks like this. You need to paste the UID, the identifier of the resource, and the tags. And we have some predefined text. I think it was named like this. And yeah, that's it. So we did a post to add a new content or a new tag to this content fragment. And we see that it has details about it. We can also retrieve the tags on a content fragment. For example, we want to know this content fragment we have created, what tags are attached to it, and to give us the list of the tags. And now if we go and read the content fragment, this is the content fragment we have created. And also you'll see that down here, it should have some tag. Okay, this is it. We have the tagging. So we can see that our resource has all these details we have established, the fields. It has no variations, and it has these tags. So the tags are visible. It should be the tagging. Of course, you can use this more. You can have a put endpoint for updating your content fragments tag. So if we want to, let's say, add another tag to this. So this is not only the October release, as it says here, it is also the security 01 release. So we can add more tags in here. Maybe it was like releases security tag, that means that this release has some security enhancements. And basically your imagination is the limit here. Then we go to the versioning API. So versioning API is a great way to manage and track different versions of your content. You can create versions. For example, when you publish your content fragment, you may want to create a version. So you have a reference point of what you have published. You can retrieve the version, delete the version, and do a lot of things with them. So this enables you to track changes, to revert your content if something went wrong, and so on. But enough with the talk. I can show you a short demo of this and have some hands-on on this. First, we want to create a version of this content fragment. We have earlier pasted, repaste actually, the content fragment ID. We have retrieved this from the content fragment we have created, the one that is successful. And we want to create this new version of the content fragment. And we click send, and our version is created. And if we want to list all the version of this content fragment, we can use the get versions endpoint, which uses the UUID of content fragment. So you can see all the versions. We have two versions created, a few minutes apart, and that's it. We also can read details about the version. So let's say we have created this version when we first published the release, and we want to see what it was, what we have published. Because maybe our content fragment has suffered some modifications since then, and we want to see how the version looked. Let me also paste the UUID. So this is the UUID of the content fragment followed by versions and the UUID of the version that we have retrieved from the list versions. And we see details about our release. So this is a really powerful way to track your changes, to see what version you have published at what time. And this basically allows you also to restore the version. For example, our current version has some modifications that are not needed. So we want to restore to a previous version. We can do that by, let's say, getting this version UUID, going into the restore endpoint. This endpoint allows us, as I said, to restore the version. And it basically, it needs the site's content fragment through CF fragments, UUID of content fragment, followed by versions restored and the UUID of the version we want to restore to. And going to this, we will see that we have a 200, meaning that our current version is the one that we have restored. We can also delete a certain version. For example, I can take this version and delete it. First, I will update the UUID. So we have the content fragment, the latest content fragment we have created, which is not this one. This is the version ID. This should be the version ID. Okay. And we can delete it. And we see that we have a 412, meaning that the if match header is not updated. We have a precondition failed. because when you want to do certain operations that are critical, for example, deleting or updating something, you need to make sure that you know what version you are deleting. Meaning this is technically a concurrent protection mechanism. Two people cannot do the same operation at the same time on the same resource. So this header is here to protect us. And for this, we need to take the e tag that it usually retrieved from the retrieval from the reading endpoint, and we update the e tag. And now we have 204 no content, meaning that the resource was successfully deleted. And now when you do the list of versions of this content fragment, we should only see one version, which is this one. So this is the version. It offers you the CRUD API, so you can create versions at different times. You can delete them, restore them. And yeah, basically that's it with the versioning. Okay, now the next feature we have developed is the search content fragment. This feature enables programmers, clients to search for different criteria in the content fragments. And you can see that you have a lot of criteria to search. You can search the content fragments that are built based on our model ID. So all the fragments that you build model and you'll receive the list of the fragments. You can search the content fragments that have been created by this user or that have been modified by a certain user or before or after a date. You also can search by status. There are a lot of criteria to search by. By today, I will show you the tag. We will try to search some content fragments that have some tag attached because we have earlier seen how the tagging API works. And for that, we need to prepare a little, meaning that we have already tagged the main content fragment with that ID, but we need to tag the rest of the content fragment. So we have more resources. For example, we'll tag with the October release, the first release note, because the release note is also part of the October release. So it makes sense to have it included. I will copy paste this and the second release, and I will tag the second release note with this tag. And yeah, now we should have 3 resources tagged with the release 2023 October tag. So going to the search content fragment by tag, we see that we have an /cf/fragments/search and a query parameter. So this query parameter, it's a new URL encoded, and we can see how it looks. I have it in here. So it should look like this. Actually, we have another. So we should filter using tags that are this tag. So which is the release 2023 October. And we have this URL encoded parameter that we'll paste in here. And we go and search the content fragments. As you can see, we should have 3 content fragments. This is the second release note we have created. And then we should have the first release note we have created and also the main release. And let me find it. It should be in here. Okay. And this is the main release, the release from 2022 October. So we have all the details about the fragments that are tagged with this. This is a powerful tool, allows you to search and organize your content based on different criteria. Okay, last but not least, we have the bulk edit of content fragments. This allows you to select multiple content fragments and edit them at the same time. So this feature has also an UI component that can be seen in the screenshots on the screen. And it's nice and easy to use, but this UI component is backed up by our Headless APIs. And let me show you how this works. So right here, I have the cf/fragments this binary place endpoint that looks into this path. So these content fragments are the ones that we have created, the 3 release nodes and the main content fragment created. And here I want to find the 2023 text. It will look into the text field of this content fragment. So it won't change the title, it won't change the data, but the field, the text field, and replace it with 2020. We want to ignore errors and not a dry run. The dry run function lets you see where you have changes without actually applying them. So if we go, we'll see that in the fourth release node is not applicable because it doesn't have the 2023 word in it. In the second, we don't have the third, but in the release node, in the main release node we have created, we have replaced OK. And to see if this worked, we can go and read the fragment again. I will read it again and see that, for example, now we have release 2020 instead of release 2023. We have values for release version 2020 and so on. And that is it. The search by content fragments endpoint and the bulk edit are the 2 latest features we have developed. Now, a short summary. We talked about why we are developing headless APIs, so why we're in doing the APIs. And the answer was for you to have your business run smooth and easily. We looked back at the Adobe Developer Live conference from May. We looked a little in the statistics. We've seen how much actually the APIs are used. We've seen the new strengths and the enhancements of APIs, and this leads us to the end of the session. Now, if you want to continue the discussions, please scan the QR code on the screen, and we can talk more about this. But right now, I'm waiting your live questions. About the API release question, we don't have yet a date that is fixed. No date yet, but you can check for AEM Cloud release notes, and you will see the latest updates about our releases. So here you have all the informations you need. For example, for the latest release, that is the September release, you will find the tickets and everything. So you will be updated when we are officially GA. And this is the link you should follow for updates. And that's it.